Welcome to Life is a Rollercoaster, a podcast about the past, present, and future of the events and attractions industry. If you like future updates about our podcasts, please like and subscribe.
Welcome to another edition of Life is a Rollercoaster podcast with myself, Tracy, and James Mellors. And today we're going to be talking about things that go off behind the scenes that people don't realise goes off. And I probably don't know that they go off. So this is going to be another learning curve for me. So are you ready to delve some of those secrets of behind the scenes magic to us?
Yeah, no, of course. I don't know what I can think of, but yeah, let's go for it.
Well, first off, obviously, when a fair comes to town, everybody just sees them pulling up, building up. What is the process before all that happens to actually get a fair up and running?
Fairs are all different, really, because some are run by councils. Again, it's very different in the European. So on the European ones, a lot of people tender for fairs. So there's a lot of tender processes and things that's going on beforehand. In the UK, you've got a lot of council or authority run sites. So, they end up sending out their application forms, etc., for everybody to send information, the sizes of the rides, whether it's the same as last year. Now, the difference with the UK, which I think I explained before, is a lot of the bigger sites, the bigger fairs, like the charter fairs, sites are handed down year on year through generations, through family. So the positions, let's say the sites, are almost pre-allocated for that person. But they still have to send in risk assessments, and every year that's always changing, as we know now. The latest thing on everybody's agenda now is COVID risk assessments.
Yeah.
So everybody now has a COVID risk assessment. So every year there's always, or not every year, but there's always something new that's coming up. But there's quite a lot goes on behind the scenes. Then you have other lessees, like when we run some fairs, some sites of our own, then we have to go through to like the SAGE committees on the councils, explain what you're going to do, think about your traffic management. So yeah, there's quite a lot. It's not just a case of, and then when you've done all that, and this is the thing of being the showman, a lot of that is done, by the same person. Then they get to site and then they're installing, then they're operating, and at the same time they're planning the next venue. So now there's quite a lot of thought process to be gone into it all.
Yeah. Oh, so one thing that is quite full on behind the scenes is the Showmans Guild, and I don't think a lot of people quite understand. We know that they're there, but what are they and what do they do?
So the Showmans Guild was set up over 100 years ago, and it was so we as a showman, you work to if you're in the Showmans Guild, you work to a rule book, which really it was set up to try and stop people from taking off other people's sites, having fairs next to a fair, because it's not good for the industry to have fairs on one site, for instance, one after the other one all the time. So really it was set up in that way to try and protect people's rights, to make sure people had something to go back to, because again, in the fairground industry, it's not like a property where you buy a shop, you have a building, you have something. These are just elements of grass that doesn't actually belong to anybody. So year on year, whose is that bit of grass? It doesn't belong to anyone because it's the landowner's piece of grass. But as far as a fair's concerned, so the rules were set up in different ways to try and to make sure that there was something set in place, rules to follow. And if people had complaints about other showmen, it's not the sort of thing that they could go to a court. You can't go to a court and say, I've got a fair here and somebody else has put a fair just down the road now. The courtman's going to, the judge is going to say, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's not my problem. So they have management committees, they have complaint committees. So there's a lot of things down in central London. So that's the main Showmans Guild. And then each area has a section. So we were members of the Nottingham and Derby section. So it doesn't mean that you don't go out of that area. Back in the past, people used to stick to their areas.
Yeah.
But now it doesn't mean that. It's just that your local section tries to deal with the issues or anything within that area, but also to represent all members. So if somebody is having a problem with something and, they want some technical advice or whatever, not necessarily technical, but legal advice, they might come to other showman members who's members of that committee to try and help people out, because like I said, a lot of showmen are one-man bands.
Yeah.
So sometimes, people need a bit of help.
Yeah. When it comes to arranging a fair or an event such as like a one of your winter wonderlands I've got behind me here today, what do you think is the area that causes you the biggest headache and the biggest problems when it comes to setting it up?
I don't really know. The area of what? Of the job?
Of actually getting something, saying like, right, we're going to do an event here from start to finish. What's the one area that you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this?
I don't know. I don't think there's an area. I think for me, more than anything now, it is just the paperwork side of everything.
Yeah.
There's so much now, like with the sages and the committees, and you have to go and satisfy so many people for licensing. That's probably like one of the most boring parts, event management plans, but it's one of the most critical parts.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure that everything's been done adequately. So many different rules and laws there now that weren't there many years ago. So yeah, that's probably the most complicated and hardest bit, as far as I would think anyway.
Have you ever wanted to put an event on anywhere or come up with an idea for an event and been refused?
A few times, yeah, because again, it's different reasons. Some people sometimes again think about the traffic management. The event could be too popular. We've had different councils and things in the past potentially not want that event in that area, which is fine.
Yeah.
If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times it was just a case of making proposals, pushing them out and see how it goes. But that's the same as any business, licensing. You could go and buy a building. Doesn't mean you're going to be able to put a pub in it. You've got to get the license for it. So it's the same as anything like that. But if you don't get refused, then you're not trying. I don't think you're not trying for the next available idea.
Obviously with enthusiasts, a lot of them like to go into different areas a bit for jobs. If anybody did want to get into event managing, what would be the best advice you could give them? Apart from don't do it.
No, yeah. I mean, everybody that I know that's got into events and things absolutely love it, and you've got to enjoy it. Events, it's something that's moving to something when people do the concerts, road shows, different things like that. You've got to enjoy doing what you're doing, and I think the main thing would be just experience. If you want to get into event management, you've got to almost start at the bottom, be on those events and see how it works and follow it through. I think it's great going to university, learning everything, but you can't be experienced when it comes to that kind of thing. You've got to think about people flow, potential crushes, where people could get too tight, fire exits. Yes, there's a legality, but you've got to think practicality as well. So I think experience is extremely key.
Yeah. Does any of the all the behind the scenes stuff, how does it differ between a static park and a travelling fun fair?
Not very. The thing is when you've obviously with affairs, you've got to probably do 15 management plans because you're doing lots of different sites. Whereas with a park, once you've got an infrastructure set, then it's set, it's there. The difference I'd have with behind the scenes on the theme park and the traveling fairs would be maintenance.
Yeah.
Because a theme park is open every single day throughout the year, you have that winter period then where it's solid behind the scenes maintenance. So you have almost a constant operations. Yes, you've got your maintenance, your daily checks, your weekly checks to ensure rides, and your preventative maintenance to make sure everything's safe and can be running as good as possible. However, when you're on the fairgrounds, because the rides are up and down a lot more, you have a lot more days closed in between. You do have more opportunities to get the maintenance done as you're going along.
Yeah.
Whereas with a park, you need to try and make sure when the ride's working, it's going to run for 6 months non-stop, preferably. And as everybody will know, that's very hard to judge and make something just run constantly for 6 months without a single issue.
Yeah. Also, I think a lot of people think that, being the owner of a park, you can just sit back and enjoy it and do nothing. but what actually goes into it for yourself of actually running a theme park?
There's a lot of thought. I'm always on the phone to the guys. I think it's harder than the days when I used to run the rides ourselves, because you were there doing the maintenance, you knew things was done properly, whereas now it is more of the directorship and just ensuring that everybody is doing what's needed to be done. And again, especially on ride breakdowns and things, to try and make sure things have been done as quickly as possible to get them back up and running again. So there's always a, has this been done? Has that been done? And you're just kind of thinking about the whole business.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't just sit back and relax. Yes, we've got good members of the team that can run a lot, but I think it's the same again with anybody in any business. You've still got to make sure things are done, and make sure things are done to your standard and the way you want to see it completed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure people could just sit back and relax, but
I bet you'd like to.
yes and no. Yes and no. I enjoy it as much as anything.
Yeah. The one thing that it drives me mad actually is when people say, "Oh, get a new ride," and they just think it's that simple. So could you explain the whole process from start to finish of getting a new ride and what that entails?
It's not just, it's loads of things when people say, "Oh, this is what people need to do next. This is what, this is what they should do." And I think we spoke about this before, when people say, "Oh, what this amusement park needs is like a shower coaster. This park should get that." It's not that easy.
Yeah.
Like you said, you've got to look at your demographics for the park, what you need, the amount of money you've got to spend. Is that going to then bring in the extra revenue to make it back again? So yeah, it's not just a click of the fingers. And rides are a lot of money. Rides are a lot of money. So you've got to make sure it's going to work. At the end of the day, an amusement park are there for guests' pleasure. But the people that's running an amusement park, it's a business.
Yeah.
So we've got to try and mix the two. You've got to mix. You've got to make your business work, but get the pleasure from the visitors. So if the people are enjoying the roller coasters and things that's on offer, then that's good for your business. So it's quite easy for people to say, "Oh, they should do this." I mean, the amount of times, "Oh, if you drop your prices, you'll get twice the amount of people on." No, not necessarily. And if we drop the prices, you have to get more than twice the amount of people on.
Yeah.
Because actually the amount of people that you're riding, then you increase your staff costs, you increase the running costs, because the rides are going around more, which is wearing things out. So actually it doesn't work that easily. So a lot of people just look at things and say, "Oh, well, if if they drop the prices, you'd make more if you do this." And it can get frustrating sometimes, because I suppose it's easy for people to just jump to conclusions and think they can run a park, or they can run somebody else's business.
Yeah, it's that whole thing that it's not just a case of getting a ride. It's the right. Well, can we afford it? The planning permission
It's
and
the upkeep, the maintenance, and that's the other thing. Pricing is very, very hard, because as amusement parks, fairground rides, whatever you want, whatever industry, we all want to try and keep our prices reasonable, because you want people to come back. But at the same time, you've got to try and think, well, how many times will people come back? If you make the prices £1 a ride, then yes, you might get a few more people on. But every time that roller coaster goes round, those wheels wear quicker.
Yeah.
So just by cutting the prices, you're actually doubling your expenses.
Yeah.
So it's a fine margin to try and get things right. And maintenance is a big, big part of our expenses. For everybody nowadays, it really is a high cost that to get replacement parts and things, it can be a fortune.
Yeah. Speaking of buying rides, have you ever bought one just completely impulsively?
No, I don't think so. I mean, no. It's not the sort of thing you just go out. It's not like saying, "Oh, I'll go and get a bag of sweets today."
Just walking past, I'll have one of them.
No, they're a big financial investment. So no, everything that we've bought has had a plan. It's had a reason why we've wanted to buy a ride and what we've done with it. So no, you don't just go out and buy one instantly off a shelf.
Yeah.
If I had enough money, that would be great, though, wouldn't it? Just be able to I'll have one of them.
But I think people actually do think that sometimes.
No.
It's like, well, I'll have one of them. Right, well, as soon as we're talking behind the scenes, one thing that we haven't really talked about much yet is the yards. And anyone not familiar with it, what is a showman's yard and what goes off there?
Well, the showman's yard is the storage really for the winter time, but it's also where your maintenance goes on. A lot of the showmen then again, because historically everybody were in caravans moving around with a business. A lot of people now have houses, so the yard is the workplace where everything's kept in there, stored, containers piled high, whatever you need, your spare parts. That's your go-to place, because when you're moving around on the fairgrounds, you try and reduce the amount of baggage that you're taking with you all the time.
Yeah.
So if you've got your spare parts and things back at the yard, then yeah, you nip back. Our yards have always just been full of props, infrastructure, because we've built the beaches, the winter events, we've got Halloween props. So, when we take people to our place and whenever we go to meetings, different times, oh, we've got some of them in the yard. And people are like, Mike, this is like Mary Poppins handbag. Because it's not very big, but we just have bits everywhere.
Yeah.
But again, that's the same thing at amusement parks. If you go in their back of house, they'll have lots of things spare, because you never know when something's going to be needed again.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many yards have you got now?
Oh, well, ideally we could do with one big one, but we're spread across about 5 different locations.
Yeah.
So we have got, we just outgrew everything.
Yeah.
We just outgrew the spaces that we had.
Do you spend much time yourself there?
I don't now. Can't remember really very often the last time I've popped down. Used to spend a lot of time there, and I do enjoy it when I get down there again, if you've got a project to get your teeth into. But yeah, I don't get down there now much. I'm normally in these 4 walls.
Do you wish you were down there more?
I do, on certain times when it's blowing a gale and raining. Yeah, I'm quite happy in these 4 walls. When the sun's out and there's projects to be done, then yeah, it was good. It's always good banter with the lads. Different skills. You're always moving everything around, getting things out. So yeah, I enjoy being around the materialistic part of the business.
Yeah. So obviously, given office-based, yard-based, and out at a park base, what would you say is your favourite place, and where do you spend most of your time?
Most of the time now is in the office. I think my favourite place is out on a site. It doesn't matter whether it's in the yard, whether it's at a park, or I just enjoy being out on site. I think I physically think better out there.
Yeah.
But it's what I've always enjoyed. It's what I've always done as well. Like you said about enthusiasm and things, I just enjoy seeing the rides, seeing everything what you've done. Same thing when you build an event like the Winter Wonderland behind you or something, you can look back at it and think, we've created this in 2 weeks or whatever it might be. And then say, I love walking around the park, just looking at everything working and, trying to think, how do we make it better?
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose that's when you're walking around, that's when your inspiration happens, isn't it?
Yeah. And I love the busy operating days.
Yeah.
I love busy operating days, looking at it. Okay, how do we make that queue move faster? What do we need to do? What do we need to plan? Where's the pinch points? So I think those busy days are always, they're probably the peaks.
Yeah. How many people would you say that it takes to organise something such as Nottingham Winter Wonderland? For talking like the backstage people, because there's so many different departments I think that people don't think about, such as like you've got your marketing teams and all that. How many people roughly would you say it takes to get an event like that up and running?
Office based on the Winter Wonderland, it's not so many. Probably around half a dozen people, maybe a little bit more. But it's the people that get on the site that's where it really all comes together.
Yeah.
And again, working along with many of the people that's worked with us for many years, we just give them a site and then they'll build that attraction and then we'll site the next one. So actually setting everything up on site, yeah, you could be 100 people at times.
Yeah.
But as long as you've got a good project manager or somebody which is walking around and just making sure everything's going to plan, and then each person does their part. But Winter Wonderland usually is being programmed all throughout the year. So from closing one year, you're planning the next.
Yeah. What would you say there's a big difference between organising events in the UK and abroad, such as Saudi?
Saudi is more difficult, again, just because it was the first time it's been done. So that was difficult. And then obviously you've got a big problems with the logistics, local laws, if you've got to have company setups and things like that. So there's a lot of logistical things working abroad that you have to consider and think about. But once you actually get on site, then it's the same.
Yeah. Talking of logistics, how do you get rides to Saudi? I've often wondered that. That's a personal question just for me.
A boat. Yeah, just drive them on a boat and away they go.
I've just always thought, how did they get them over? I understand it's on a boat, but it must take a lot. It must.
We used to go, when we used to go to Dubai, we used to load the boat ourselves because the rides, they're not like normal lorries and trailers.
Yeah.
The ones that fold up and things sometimes can be very low to the floor. They can be very long, can be very heavy. So when you go on and off some ships, they can tend to ground out and you don't want the damage. So when we went to Dubai years ago, we used to actually physically be there to load the boat and then put the chains on, because if you weren't careful, the people on the ships might put the chains onto something that folds, for instance, and then they could damage it. So we had to make sure that chains were strapped off in the good places. So we used to go to Immingham, probably have a day, 2 days there loading, and then fly out to Dubai, see the boat arrive, and then get everything off again. And we used to charter a full ship. So we used to just put all of our own equipment on one ship. It's a little bit different now. So now you just put so many rides on the ships, but you try and choose one that's not going to have too many stops.
Yeah.
Because if the ship has got to stop in Lisbon, Portugal, or wherever else, and as it moves around, then sometimes they have to keep taking trailers off and putting them back on. And you don't want to do that with the rides, again, because they're not standard trailers. So the hauliers, the shippers, the people that are from country to country, again, if they put the chains and the strops on in the wrong places, they could cause damage. So it's a worry. It's a logistical nightmare again. You just get them on a ship and then hopefully you see them in 3 or 4 weeks.
Talking about rides on a ship, that reminds me of another story somebody told me. And I don't know how true this one is, so we'll find out. I think it was it for turbulence? Somebody got on the wrong boat?
No, that was the River Rapids.
Actually. Oh, was it?
Yeah, that was the River Rapids. Yeah. So, that was Anton Belchev, little Tony.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, we were bringing the rapids back from Paris, from Revachon's factory. And we're heading back for the first site, which is in Coventry. We drove all the way. We got to Calais, and we was just trying to keep in communications with each other. Where are you? Where are this? So we're all on the radios. We got on the boat, and we all shouted, "Tony, where are you, Tony?" He said, "I'm just in the queue for the boat." And we're like, "Well, we're all on. Where are you?" And as we looked, he was queuing for the wrong boat. We were like, "Oh, Tony, you're at the wrong boat." So, yeah. So that was, and then we all just sailed away and just waved at him through the window in the end. So I've had a few good sailings. I mean, I had an awful one when we went to Norway a few years back, and it was a one night, so it was across the North Sea, and I've never known a boat move about so much. My baby was about 5-6 months at the time. Oh, I never felt so sick. But literally looking out the window, and the water was coming in and out as the boat was lifting up and down. And then we had to ask to move to the back, and I was worried about the rides.
Yeah.
Just moving around and shaking, but everything was fine, to be honest with you. So it was all good. But yeah, we've had quite a few shipping crossings over to the Isle of Man. I've had a couple of times out to where I've travelled with the rides for that reason of getting, making sure they get on and off safely.
Yeah, and I take it you got Anton back.
Yeah, we got Anton back.
I spotted him the other day at Skegness Pier, so he's definitely back now.
Yeah. Now they had one actually as well. I think was coming back from Ireland, and I wasn't actually on that trip, but they got there. I think it was the Big Ben part, and there was parts out there, and a couple of showmen was all helping. And the shippers, they couldn't drive the Big Ben trailer because it was on a dolly, and they were struggling to put it on. So I think Edward tried to put one trailer on, And there was Matthew was stood on the doors of the bridge, and all of a sudden the captain just started to close the door. He closed the doors with people stood on the door, a ride which was partly ready to half the Big Ben, which could have potentially rolled into the sea. Oh, I think that was a crazy one that Edward was shouting at. It wasn't the captain, it was one of the other guys. So Edward was shouting, "I'll get me the captain. You know, this is such health and safety problems." You know, people stood on the door and there was closing it. But yeah, that was a fun old times.
It sounds like fun now. Have you got any event that you've ever done, or a moment at an event or anything like that you're extremely proud of, or that really sticks in your mind? I mean, I know probably for a lot of public, there's one that sticks in everybody's mind, and that's a certain Prime Minister dangling off a zip wire.
Well, that's probably, I was just thinking of that, but it wasn't really a time of being proud or anything. But I think that for me was one of the hardest times. And I don't very often get drained. I've always said that I don't let something beat me. And the zip line at the Olympics beat me at one point. And I wouldn't say there's much that's ever beat me. And Mitchell Barker was there with me helping at the time. Edward was at the South Bank. He was doing the Star Flyer and the Cyclone Coaster for the South Bank events. We built the zip line. It was very late to get it there on site. We just couldn't seem to get it. This was before Boris even got on it, I think. We couldn't get the speed ratio right. So we got a zipline company working with us. We built the structures, and then the zipline company was supposed to do the rest. And we just couldn't seem to get it right. The angles, I don't know what it was. People was coming down too fast. So then we had to make a hockey stick where you had to shallow the wire cable out, so people slowed down before they came in. People was coming in too fast, not fast enough. We're just having loads of problems. So we ended up taking down one tower, extending it further away. Then we had to take down the big tower because we couldn't take the smaller tower any further because it was right back to a wall. But this was all put the cables up. No, it won't work. Drop the cables down, do this, put the cables up, drop them down. And then it came to the opening of the Olympics and the zip line still wasn't quite ready. And I think that was one of the only times that sticks in my mind that if a hole could have swallowed me up, I'd have jumped in it. I was just, because it was on the global world stage, you know, the zip line was there. It was part of the Olympics. We wanted to do something special. We'd done something different and it just wasn't working. And thanks to Mitchell Barker, who was there at the time, I think he saw me get down and he said, "I've never seen you get like that before." And he kind of just said, "Come on, let's do it again." And he just gave me that little bit of a kick that I needed to get on with it. But we'd done, you know, as soon as the site closed, we'd have cranes out and we'd work all night long to try and get things working. And then, it was working great. We had customers on it. Everything was going good. And then Boris came down and got stuck. So, that does stick in the mind.
But it's just left such an iconic moment now that everybody finds fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think he even looked quite happy about it.
You know what? He handled it extremely well. Extremely well. I mean, it wasn't intentional. Like I said, people was coming down too fast. It was one thing or another. You got to remember this was in the middle of June or July. We were all wearing shorts and T-shirts. Boris came down. So because you didn't have wind drag, you were going fast. Boris came down in a suit with two flags. And this just caused something that we hadn't really judged at the time. And we only just missed him. So we had like a catcher. And that literally, when I say just missed him, probably by about that much. And that was it.
Yeah.
The catcher just didn't quite get him. And then he rolled backwards. So, it was a funny time. And then when I was stood there literally waiting for him to come off, and I thought, oh my gosh, how do we answer this? No, Boris came off. He went straight down to the press. So I have to give him credit for that on how he dealt with it. Because I think a lot of people would have come out of that in a bad situation. And I think he actually came out quite well.
Yeah, I think that's one thing you've got to say. No matter what side of the fence you sit on or anything, he's got a sense of humour about stuff. And I think he took that quite well. So, excuse me. Have you got any other events that you put on that obviously, you know, you've been really proud of and you think that's the best one that we've ever done?
No, I was really proud of the Olympic beach, what we've done at the Olympic Park. I was proud of that one. It looked really good. We put the carpets down. I don't think anybody had really done that before. So we astroturfed it, and what was a rough looking site actually looked really, really nice. Plus we had the Rio Olympics in 2016 on our big screens there. We had some different celebrities come down. So that was really a nice one.
Yeah.
And I think the other one was probably when we put the big wheel up at Liverpool One. Because we had to put it on a steel frame. We put the big wheel on top of it, for anyone that doesn't know that really, a big wheel on top of a multi-story car park. So we had to strip the wheel down into small pieces to get it up there in the first place. And we had to build a steel frame, which was over 90 tons, just for the steel frame, and then pile it into the pylons that run all the way through the car park, and then evenly distribute the wheel load. So it transferred through this steel frame. So the steel frame was probably 2 meters high. So then we had to get the big wheel, which is on lorries and trailers, onto the top of this steel frame on the top of a multi-story car park. So we had to build temporary bridges out of trackway, polystyrene blocks, railway sleepers. So yeah, that was quite a challenge, and that was probably one to be quite proud of at the time. It was really a nice challenge to get it done, see it finished. It was just a shame when we had to take it down.
Yeah, just going back to the zip line, because it's something that a lot of people have asked. Is do you still own that?
Long story. We actually do still have the towers in our storage yard, but they was being used with us and another company down at Archbishop's Park in London. So it's still in the storage yard at the moment, but the towers did actually get purchased, but then the company went bankrupt. So we still have them because they didn't pay all the money. So yes, we do still have them.
Right.
Are we planning on doing much with it? Not at the moment. Hopefully.
Well, I've often thought. Have you seen in Las Vegas where they've got the zip wire over the strip?
Yes.
We could do that down Sea Lane.
We spoke about that actually. The first year we took on Fantasy Island, we thought about it, but again, the zip line is very labor intensive.
Yeah.
I thought it worked really good when it was at Hyde Park. People was flying down for Winter Wonderland, but it's a very labor intensive ride. So it's not been the best for generating revenue, and it can be a lot of work.
Yeah. However, would you ever look at investing into anything else?
I don't know. I mean, the people at Zip World, obviously in North Wales, they do it, but they do it on a permanent fixture, and that's fantastic. What they do, flying across the canyons and the lying down. So I think if you're going to do it, you just got to do it right, as those guys are doing.
Yeah. No, do you know, I'd love to see a zip line. I do like them. Obviously, if you spent... I love that saying. Obviously, if you spent all this time setting an event up and it goes horribly wrong and you get lots of negative reviews, how are you feeling on that?
I think we touched on this one.
We don't think it'd ever happen.
Well, we touched on this one the other week about the Winter Wonderland. Obviously,
yeah, we did. Yeah.
Due to COVID restrictions and one thing or another, and it just became, not necessarily the event, but the town was too busy. We got a lot of negative comments on that. The city council got a lot of negative comments. Yeah, it's really disheartening because I think what I've said it before, whatever you do, even as theme park owner, event organizer, whatever you're going to do, you're never going to be able to satisfy everybody, and you can only try and do your best.
Yeah.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing. And I think that's the only one really where we've had anything like that. You get lots of negative comments from people all the time, or whatever you do. If you alter height restriction on a ride, people have negative comments. If you alter a ride length, if you change a ride, people have negative comments. It's very rare, unfortunately, the British negativity that we're all quick to give negative comments.
Yeah.
But not very much give the positives. So if people go and have a great time at places, they're not very quick to jump on your TripAdvisors or what it might be, or go to customer services and say, I just want to say, I've had an absolutely fantastic day today. Do you know what I mean? Well done to all your stuff at the park. In fact, it was so good, I'd been willing to pay more. You'd never get that. What you'll get is people coming up saying, he said this, they've done that wrong. This is a rip-off. I didn't get that. And so you kind of just got to get to the fact that there's always going to be negativity around. You can only try and reduce that negativity and do your best. But yeah, it does hurt because, you know, you've put so much time and effort into try and make things right. And you want to satisfy. I'll tell you what, the best way of doing it is just look at the footfall. That's it. You know, if you go to an amusement park and somebody says that it's a load of rubbish, you might get 100 people say that park's a load of rubbish. But then if it gets a couple of 100,000 people through it in the year, well then, you know what, 100 people to a couple of 100,000, you can accept that.
Yeah.
But social media makes it so much easier for these negative comments to get out.
It does.
But in the old days, people used to write to the paper and used to have columns in the newspaper. But again, it's the same thing where people only used to write to complain.
Yeah.
They still do.
No, I know. So for the future of all the events is we've got beaches, we've got winter wonderlands, we've got something for every season. Is there anything new that we'll see?
I don't know. I mean, I'm always interested as well to see what other people are doing and other events around. It's great to see the ideas that people have got that's going around. Even a lot of the theme parks now are having their own events and things to change them up throughout the years. So
yeah, I can advertise that for you. I've got my Fear Island top on today.
No, there's nothing else new that I can think of to say at the moment, but it's always interesting, like I say, to see what's out there in the industry, what's happening, you know. So yeah, I don't know what else to say on that one at the moment.
Right. Never say never.
Never say never.
Never say never. Well, we are just about out of time, so that ends up just nicely. And don't forget, for all those listening, if you want any questions asking or anything covering, just leave a comment, and don't forget, like, subscribe on the social media. And we hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Life is a Rollercoaster, a podcast about the past, present and future of the events and attractions industry. If you'd like future updates about our podcasts, please like and subscribe.